talking about a Generation 1 Pokémon and its evolution. A Pokémon that is ironically both known and yet very unknown if you ask me. I'm talking about EKANS. What do you truly know of this Pokémon? Not much, right? I would say even Ash does not know a thing or two because EKANS has never been scanned with a Pokédex in the anime, despite debuting in the second episode of the original series. EKANS is the one Pokémon that aired the longest without getting a Pokédex entry. A shame, isn't it? Which is why I'm delighted to say the following. Please allow me to enlighten you about this Pokémon. EKANS is a snake, in case you haven't noticed. Its name says it all, as the name EKANS so happens to be the name snake, but spelled backwards. Okay, we do know it is a snake, but what snake are we talking about? At first I thought the design would be based on the rattlesnake, considering that tail rattle it has. To my surprise, EKANS is a combination of multiple snakes. First of all, its venomous bite, despite seemingly having no visible teeth, and tail rattle are a reference to the rattlesnake. Second of all, that lack of visible teeth is actually similar to an egg-eating snake, a non-venomous snake that can only be found throughout the continent of Africa. Third of all, the single yellow stripe around its neck is a reference of the ring-necked snake, a harmless species of snake found throughout much of the US, central Mexico, and southeastern Canada. Fourth of all, the line connecting its eyes is reminiscent of the marking on the back of the Indian cobra's hood, a nice touch I would say. And to finish, EKANS has a trademark technique known as glare, a technique where the user is intimidating and frightening the foe into paralysis. The technique glare can be seen as a reference to the legendary basilisk, a venomous serpentine dragon said to be able to kill people with its stare. To be very honest, I suddenly want to rewatch Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets when talking about the basilisk. I remember how it was said that looking directly in the eye caused instant death, but an indirect look would merely render the victim petrified. And that one cat, I remember, one cat survived because it saw the reflection of the basilisk on the water that was on the floor. Truly, that had to be the most convenient and luckiest set of circumstances ever in the history of the entertainment industry for a character to defy death. Anyway, back to EKANS. To those thinking that its design looked rather simple, now you know that there was an inspiration to the design that came from America, Africa, and Asia, combining various snakes into one. And that alone, I think it is very interesting as it shows how much time and effort was put into the design of Pokémon's first snake. Now, I admit that it is a bit difficult to determine EKANS' height. Sure, it is written that it is 6'7" or 2 meters long, which is huge, believe me. I doubt you'd want to carry a snake of 2 meters on your shoulders, and I'm talking of experience. Anyway, it's hard to determine its height because as a snake, EKANS belongs to the group of animals known as the indeterminate growers. This includes snakes, lizards, amphibians, corals, and even some trees. These are all life forms who continue to grow until they die. EKANS is a Pokémon that will also continue to grow with age. Unfortunately, we were not even told at what height a baby EKANS would start with. All we got is that a baby EKANS has a painful but non-venomous bite, at least for now. Like most snakes, you can encounter an EKANS in grassy savannas and plains where it moves stealthily through grass. Obviously, perfect for a snake, as snakes do rely on stealth to attack their prey. Just for your information, the puff adder is the stealthiest of snakes as it has an additional survival mechanism that, until now, little has been known about. It doesn't carry a scent, making it undetectable to even the most keenly nosed predators. So, EKANS can be encountered in grassy savannas and plains, but also in forests and desolate wastelands where it usually preys on eggs from Pidgey and Spearow nests. Although eggs aren't the only type of food it goes for. EKANS have a wide variety of food they go for and tend to attack the prey from behind, obviously when the prey least suspects an attack. That's terrifying, but it is the law of nature. I am sure you are all familiar with snakes and their habits of constantly pulling their tongues out, right? They inspect new things by flicking their tongue. This allows them to bring scent from the air to a specialized organ inside their mouth that can interpret this scent's information. EKANS, as a snake, is also flicking its tongue out. This enables it to detect danger and also the scent of prey. What is interesting about EKANS is that, even though we know how it behaves when it goes on the offensive, it also has some strategies when it is on the defensive. For example, if not on a tree branch, it will coil itself up in a position in which it can defend itself from all directions. A smart thing to do, to be honest. We learned from previous episodes how Pikachu can attack in groups, so an EKANS might be at a severe disadvantage. To maximize the chances, it would obviously be wise to put yourself in a position where you could at least last a little longer. Anyway, hope you are ready for the gore stuff. When a foe is defeated, it would be the time to eat. EKANS has a jaw that can be detached to swallow large prey. Do not forget that we're still talking about a Pokémon that is 2 meters long or 6'7", meaning it could really swallow a large prey, although we have to be a bit careful when we say so. Its height is great, but EKANS is not large. It weighs about 7 kilos or 15 pounds, so there is clearly a limit as to what prey it will swallow. If it does try to swallow big meals, EKANS will become too heavy to move or might become stuck and cause it to faint. You will notice that when it is sleeping, it will again tend to curl itself up in a spiral while it rests. A very deliberate move, as it is a position allowing it to quickly respond to a threat that could be coming from any direction with a glare from its upraised head. This did leave me with the general question, why do snakes even curl? Here's an answer to it. You'll find the link towards the answer in the description box. Let me quote. Snakes can bite or strike from any position. Coiling does increase the distance that a snake can strike, but seeing a coiled snake doesn't mean it's ready to strike. Snakes are often coiled up because it's a safer body position. Being stretched out leaves them more vulnerable to predators. Here's us with the one evolution of EKANS. We're talking about Arbok. To me, yet another Pokemon that is both known and yet unknown, probably because it was kind of living in the shadows of Team Rocket's Jessie. Allow me to show you that Arbok is much more badass than you think. When you spell the name Arbok backwards, it spells Cobra. And clearly the Cobra has been the big inspiration for Arbok. Despite the obvious traits, Arbok is also a mixture of various types of snakes. For starters, its venomous bite and hood marking seems to be based on the Indian cobra, a member of the big 4 species that inflict the most snake bites on humans in India. Second of all, Arbok may also be based on the king cobra, a snake that can only be found in the jungles in southern and southeast Asia. It is the world's longest venomous snake and also a snake that preys chiefly on other snakes, including its own species. Third of all, Arbok's powerful constriction may be a reference to boas, anacondas, and pythons, 3 animals that are not venomous but instead use constriction to subdue their prey. To finish, Arbok's ability to use stare may once more be a reference to the basilisk. If there's one thing I found a bit ironic when looking back at the Pokémon anime is that Arbok's height wasn't always done justice. I could even say that I wouldn't be surprised many wouldn't believe Arbok is a huge Pokémon, considering that Jessie appeared to be towering over it. On Reddit, there is this debate about how tall Jessie would be. Some would have reason to believe that she is about 5'5" or 1'65". Arbok, my good friends, is a whopping 3.5 meters or 11'6", meaning it is about twice the height of Jessie. The Pokémon is huge, and unlike EKANS who weighs 7 kilos or 15 pounds, it is big as it now weighs 65 kilos or 143.3 pounds. We're talking about a huge Pokémon in case you did not realize. Also, it has been stated that if any part of Arbok's body, except for the head, is cut off, it can regrow the rest of its body again in a matter of a few weeks. So again, I'm telling you, I don't think the anime did Arbok some real justice when it comes to height and even weight. When I was doing my research on Arbok and its behavior, I do admit that I was really impressed at how dangerous it is. To be honest, now I can really tell that I don't think the Pokémon anime was entirely fair towards Arbok. It's probably because it was shown to be sort of like the punching bag of the series. Let me explain why Arbok is much more dangerous than you'd have thought. Everything about Arbok when it comes to design and characteristics inspire fear and intimidation. Its eyes are intimidating, it has several sharp teeth which are venomous. Below its head you can see a face-like pattern that has over 6 or 20 possible variations depending on the area it grew up and depending on what Pokédex entry you use, because they don't seem to agree on the number of patterns you can find. Anyway, The patterns on Arbok are rumored to be warning markings and are also used to intimidate the opponent. Weaker foes will flee just at the sight of the pattern unless they are frozen in fear. And by the way, about the pattern, in the Pokemon verse there is a character named Agatha, an old rival of Professor Oak who has sworn a personal vendetta over him and anyone who associates with him. Agatha has an Arbok as a partner who so happens to have the ability to change the pattern on its belly and use different corresponding abilities. Changing the pattern resulted in an increase in power, and it also gave Arbok an invulnerability to status conditions like being paralyzed, being poisoned, etc. if the pattern is uncovered. This does not mean that all Arbok can do so, but it does show a sort of hidden potential. If that was something that always came back to all Arbok, really that would be a huge game changer. After stunning its opponents with the pattern on its stomach, Arbok quickly wraps them up in its body and waits for them to stop moving. In the meanwhile, it can also be that the foe will be poisoned just to make sure it doesn't get away. And once the perfect opportunity emerges, Arbok will eat the victim. Just a side note, how would you even get away from its grip? Arbok is capable of crushing opponents by coiling its body around them and squeezing them tightly. It is said that it can even flatten steel oil drums. So unless the Pokédex entry is making an exaggeration, which won't be the first time by the way, Arbok truly is the type of Pokemon that is very lethal. With its height and weight, try to imagine the force it could display. Now our Cobra Pokemon, I would say, just like a real Cobra, isn't necessarily an offensive Pokemon despite having multiple ways of guaranteeing a slow and brutal death. I say so because it is a territorial Pokemon, meaning that it will probably get aggressive once it feels that someone is entering its safety space. The worst is that Arbok is also vengeful in nature, meaning that it won't give up a chase once it targets its prey or an opponent, no matter how far the distance. That might be my worst nightmare, to be honest, to be chased after by a big and venomous snake. Hi guys, this is it for EKANS and Arbok. I'm hoping that you now have a much better idea on what the Pokemon is all about. I want to say that I'm actually pretty impressed because, truth be told, I didn't know much about it. I only knew it received beatings on a regular basis. Doing some research about both EKANS and Arbok, I now find myself looking at them with great admiration. Did you guys know that there was so much to both Pokemon? Meaning from how they behave to what was at the basis for their design. There is so much, so please drop a comment in the comment section and tell me about how you now view EKANS and Arbok. I'm curious to read what you have to say. By the way, my good friends, know that we are going to be focusing on Generation 1 Pokemon first. After that, we'll jump to the second generation and beyond, unless you guys know how to convince me to also talk about the other newer Pokemons. So what other Pokemon do you want to see analyzed? Make sure to write it down in the comment section, and depending on the amounts of likes that comment will get, we might as well do it.